Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, our guest is Democrat Representative Patricia Todd from Birmingham. Also, the V-Team looks at a controversial ruling that may change the 2014 elections. And we're looking at how Mike Hubbard is using his campaign contributions to finance his legal defense team. How's that working out for Mike? All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you know the hard facts. My name is Bill Britt. I'm your host. As always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Hi. Baron Coleman's off today, so we have the irrepressible Jack Campbell. Yeah. So happy to have you here, Jack.
Thank you so much.
Nice to call you irrepressible as opposed to irreplaceable.
Well,
well, we can all be replaced.
Unfortunately, not irresistible.
Well, I would beg to differ. There's some folks that feel differently about that. Listen, everybody have a great holiday.
We did.
Right.
We're glad to be back at work.
And War Eagle?
Yes, had a great time in Pasadena. We didn't bring home the big crystal, but our boys did a great job, and congrats to all of the Auburn team and
Absolutely.
Auburn family.
Absolutely. Well, it's been a little slow here, but it's about to pick up as we head towards session. One of the stories that we reported last week was that Speaker Hubbard is using his campaign finance funds to pay for his legal defense. Now, so far he's spent about $70,000 with Mark White's firm, with Trussell Funderburg of Pell City. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, we all know that I perceive this to be a little bit of a gray area. I mean, I understand that he has not been indicted or on anything, but he is using his campaign money really for personal issues, not for the office of the Speaker. Because my understanding, I have not seen one, but a lot of people got letters, you know, saying that they had discussed his name in bad character, and so these are. He has these very high-priced, expensive criminal defense lawyers out of Birmingham and that are connected to the DA that's taken over this investigation for Luther Strange. So it's just a very gray area, and I think, you know, given what happened to former Governor Guy Hunt, I think I would be very careful about doing something like this if I were an elected official.
Well, 62% of the money he raised in December went to legal defense. And a person or a PAC that gives you money for your own personal campaign for re-election probably are somewhat miffed by the fact that you're taking their dollars and spending it on a legal defense team for your own personal use. So.
And you know, and here we are again. We're on the eaves of the hills of session next week, and they've had, as I call, 4 different shakedowns by different people. And Mike Hubbard just had a big fundraiser on Thursday night in Montgomery, raising more money for his personal campaign.
Yeah, that was last Thursday night.
Last Thursday night, yeah.
Well, how are people reacting out there? I mean, from what I hear from a few lobbyists is they're saying, look, I'm going to give him the money because I'm afraid not to. But they don't like doing it. They just soon keep the money and put it somewhere where they think it'll do them some good. But I don't know.
I think you've seen a mixed bag. I think there's plenty of people that are scared not to give to him because they want something this session. But I think also there are a lot of people that have given in the past, but the cloud that's kind of floating over there in Lee County, people are a little bit more hesitant about giving like they have in the 3 prior years, is what I would say.
Well, it's an interesting development. I think it's out there now. People can't deny that he's doing something with the legal defense team. The other thing that's happened is the Secretary of State this last week made a ruling that really moved the bar on qualifying for Republicans and Democrats. I mean, how is this going to affect the races coming up?
Well, it's certainly going to shorten the time period, obviously, for anybody that's considering jumping into the race, and it's going to, but it does extend the time period for them to be able to do the fundraising. They do have to get in sooner, so they'll have to start their fundraising sooner. I mean, how many more candidates, guys, I mean, y'all work on the political operative side of it, how many more candidates do you think are likely to come into the picture?
I don't know, it certainly shortens the recruiting time to go find candidates to run in open seats, and even if you're wanting to take on an incumbent, you have to go recruit somebody. It's often difficult.
There's also a lot of people out there that have been raising money but have not actually gone and qualified yet. Like, for an example, once you're a candidate, like statewide, you can't necessarily go and speak to a Lions Club, Kiwanis Club, and that sort of thing and talk about politics. So you've got a lot of people, I think, that are in the back that haven't qualified yet. I know we saw some people.
I don't know if it's the legislature's fault that they're having, or the party's fault, because I understand it's the federal government that has put the pressure on them to because of the military vote, and so they're trying to comply with that. But it does kind of make it difficult to go out and recruit people in that short period of time.
Well, that's kind of what we were looking at, is that it favors incumbents. It really, I think it favors incumbents.
It does.
At the outside. The other thing that's come up this week is Trip Pittman has introduced a bill that he wants to require drug testing to receive welfare benefits. Now, we've been down this road before. I mean, is this good policy or just politics?
Well, let me just say this. The particular program that this legislation affects is TANF, the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. There was legislation that was passed by the Florida legislature a couple of years ago that was identical, that would require the drug testing of recipients of these funds. And what happened in Florida, I think, is a good lesson for what could happen in Alabama. There was a challenge, a constitutional challenge to the legislation, and the federal court in Florida put an injunction on it which prevented any further drug testing. The 11th Circuit affirmed the injunction, and then just recently the Florida District Court said no more. We're not going to allow this because it's considered an unreasonable search and seizure under the Fourth Amendment. And what I think is interesting that the Florida folks found is that the incidence of drug use amongst recipients of the TANF funds was lower than what you have in the general population. They also found it was a very expensive program. The cost outweighed the benefit. And one thing that I looked for this morning was whether or not there was a fiscal note attached to the legislation, and I did not see one to show what the estimated cost associated with this program would be.
Well, I think Senator Pittman put this out last year before, but I think the one thing about his is you have to have a prior conviction to be drug tested. It's not just a random thing that you're on welfare, you're going to get drug tested. This is, a mother or father, whomever, who's had a prior conviction.
For drugs in the last 5 years,
yeah,
I think,
that's correct.
as I understand it.
And that would be a difference between what happened in Florida with the Alabama legislation.
I think, in fact, they use that, they study that to make sure that this didn't, have the same problems that situation did. So,
well, one of the things, and
I think the average voter in Alabama would be forced. I mean, if somebody's convicted prior to that before, I don't see why. I mean, is it good politics? I think it maybe is as well.
Well, I think people in Alabama would be absolutely for it.
Sure.
I think it's something that they would be for. Listen, we got to go. We got Representative Patricia Todd from Birmingham coming up with some exciting things on her plate. We'll be right back. You're watching the V. Stay put.
I teach. I touch the future. I am AEA.
I keep the school clean every day for your children. I am AEA.
Congratulations on your scholarship. I help children make choices for college and careers. I am AEA.
We are AEA.
Ever wonder what makes us, the Smurfs, so happy? The forest, of course. This is where we, along with the beautiful forest creatures, make our home with beautiful plant life, clean water, and endless adventures. It's a place to celebrate. So discover the forest with your family today. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Our guest today is Representative Patricia Todd from Birmingham. Welcome, Representative Todd.
It is great to be here.
It is great to have you. Happy New Year.
Well, thank you. Same to you.
Did you have a good New Year?
I did. It was quiet. I like it that way.
That's unusual for you. You're kind of a troublemaker, aren't you?
I'm just blazing new trails.
Well, you certainly are. One of the bills that you have coming before the legislature this year is about medical marijuana, something that's been going on. We've talked about it for years. Nothing's happened. Do you think you're going to make some progress?
Well, we have a number of bills. The bill that we're probably going to have the most success with is actually sponsored by Representative Ball. It is a very narrowly focused bill that will decriminalize the possession of an oil that's derived from the marijuana plant. It has a very low THC content, so it has no street value. And it is extremely effective in treating children with seizure disorders.
Now, this is specifically came about through a young girl that's here in Alabama. Can you tell us about her?
Yes. A Pelham family has a child with a very rare seizure disorder, and she probably has a dozen seizures a day, some of them very violent. They've tried all the pharmaceuticals they can try, and they found out about this oil. Now, they have not used this oil, but they know a lot of other families that have, and it has been extremely effective. And actually, CNN did a special on this a number of months ago with a child in Colorado. And we actually know families who've moved to Colorado to have access to this oil that's so effective in treating the seizure disorder.
Why do you think there's such resistance against even something that's a derivative of the marijuana plant?
I don't think people understand marijuana.
Right.
And I understand that we don't want to legalize another substance that, you know, does something to your brain, but, you know, marijuana is used daily by millions of people in this country in all economic classes, and it's far less harmful than alcohol or prescription drugs. We're losing the battle on trying to rein in illegal marijuana. We've spent billions of dollars to try to eradicate it, and you can't. It's a wild plant, and it's been used for medical purposes ever since it was first discovered. And I think some of the opposition comes from that we don't want people to engage in a criminal activity to get possession of marijuana. But if we look at other states and what they've done, some of them have allowed for personal, you can have 3 plants you grow yourself for personal use. So there's all kinds of things we can do. And if you study what's happened in Colorado since they made it legal, the crime rate's decreased. The drug dealers are moving out of state because they can't do business.
Can't make any money out of it.
And their economy's picking up. And it's just a reality that we need to face.
Well, you've done a lot of work with AIDS patients. That's part of your career, and you've done it for a long time. And I know, as someone who's known people that had AIDS and suffered and died, anything you can do to alleviate suffering is generally what a family member or a caring person would do. Isn't that part of it, alleviating suffering?
That's absolutely true. I mean, we know, I personally know, because I've participated in this, that marijuana can be a great relief to people who are going through chemotherapy or who had end stage of cancer. And I had a friend who died of ovarian cancer about 5 years ago, and she really could not even get out of the bed. She couldn't eat. She was in excruciating pain. We tried everything we could, you know, I mean, and so I admit this, I purchased marijuana for her, and she was able to have conversations. It eased her pain. She was able to eat a little bit more, just to improve the quality of her life at the end.
Well, and I think that when you've seen that, when you've been faced with it, it sort of changes your thinking on whether we should legalize it or not, at least for medicinal purposes and not necessarily recreational. You talk about you're a trailblazer, and you certainly are, and you have respect on both sides of the aisle. I know Republicans that think very highly of you, that do not agree with everything that you...
Or anything.
But they respect your intellect. You are openly gay. Mm-hmm. You did get married this year.
I did, last year.
Last year, that's right. It's a new year.
It is.
And you've decided to put a bill out here to legalize same-sex marriage. That's way outside of the mainstream of Alabama.
Yeah, and I would encourage people not to take a bet on that bill because it's pretty much DOA. But it's important to keep it in the conversation. This is going to happen eventually. There's a case making its way to the Supreme Court, and I think they will rule that every state has to recognize legal marriages, and that's what we hope for. You know, Jen and I got married last year, and we will file our federal taxes together for the first time, and we will file our state taxes jointly. And what I understand from the Revenue Department, they'd never verify anybody's marital status. They don't have a way to do that.
Wow.
So if they accept ours, now I probably just got mine flagged.
Right.
You know, I'm first on the list when they see my tax return come up, is if they process it as a joint application, then they've recognized our marriage.
Very interesting. A lot of people don't like the fact that this is being handled through the courts. But the young folks today, and by young people I mean 18 to probably 40, they're really not that dead set against gay marriage. They just think it's okay. They grew up on Will and Grace. Let it be.
That's true. That's very true. I mean, when the older generation, you know, 65 and over, move on, I think we're going to see a change in attitude very quickly in the public.
What's your one wish for the new year?
That we are transparent and accountable to the people of Alabama.
You think we're going to have a good session, a long one, or is it going to be another controversial one?
Oh, it can't help but to be controversial. If the Alabama legislature is in session, it's controversial.
So they lock up your women and your liquor and all that still goes...
It's going to be I don't know. I'm not in the majority, so I'm just seeing what's going to happen.
You do have a good relationship with most people in the legislature. People know that you stand your ground. I wish you all the best in your efforts this year, and will you come back and see us soon?
Absolutely, love to.
We want to thank you for being here. This is Representative Patricia Todd. She's been our guest today. You're watching The V. We'll be right back with the V Team's Take. See you soon.
The next 30 seconds can save you a lot of money. Just do your laundry in cold and stick to full loads. Auto-sleep your computers. Plug your gadgets in a power strip and switch it off when you're done. Headed out? Turn back your thermostat by 10 degrees. And drive sensibly. The more energy you save, the more money you save. Find other great tips at energysaver.gov.
I make sure to get your kids to school and home safe every day. I am AEA.
I make sure your child receives a healthy meal each day. I am AEA.
Thank you, AEA, for protecting our public schools and our futures. We are AEA.
Big lights and bright colors, the future is drawing near with new thoughts and ideas. My dreams, they all start right here. So I take a step and time will tell. I'm filling up high like a wishing well. I got big dreams to take on.
Welcome back to the V. Well, Patricia Todd is definitely pushing the envelope for Alabama. I mean, really. The thing about medical marijuana, I mean, we've had that before. You know, can you share with us, Sherlana, some of your thoughts on that? I mean, what are we looking at here?
When I took a look at the other states that participate in allowing the purchase and sale of medical marijuana, there are currently 20 states plus the District of Columbia. 18 of those only allow residents within the state, patients who are residents within the state, to purchase. So even if you have an Alabama resident, like the example that Representative Todd gave, that child would not be able to go anywhere other than Oregon to be able to purchase medical marijuana, because that's the one state that allows out-of-state residents. The other thing that I find interesting is the Department of Justice just this summer issued a letter to all of the 20 states that are allowing the purchase and sale of medical marijuana that said, even though this is a Schedule I drug, we are going to leave the enforcement to the states when it comes to medical marijuana. So it really is a states' rights issue as far as the federal government goes.
Now, you worked in the AG's office before. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, we didn't have the legislation before us, but Patricia Todd, Representative Todd, and others have tried to push this in the last 4 or 5 years. And for instance, just last week, the governor of New York signed that bill into law up there, or shall I say, started implementing it, and they started, having this available in the hospitals and available to the citizens in the state of New York. So, I mean, I see the validity for people that need it for health reasons.
But there are people that say that marijuana is a gateway drug that just leads you to harder stuff. I mean, I don't know whether that's a good argument anymore or not.
But we're not talking about, though, like Colorado, where you open it up to the general public. I mean, we're talking about a regulatory scheme that would be in place which would allow the purchase and sale strictly for medicinal purposes.
I have a friend whose stepdad had throat and brain cancer and said because of all the drugs that he was on, he was very nauseated. And the only way that he could end the nausea was marijuana, and allowed him to eat because he had no appetite. I just think it's, we have to look at this humanely. People are suffering. If this will help them, I think we ought to open it up. And my heart surgeon told me in June marijuana should be legalized, and that was enough for me.
Well, I'm surprised to see Mike Ball and not so much so Paul Sanford sponsoring that bill.
Well, the thing is Mike Ball has been in law enforcement.
Right.
And I also think Representative Todd is very smart. She had this conversation with us afterwards. Having a Republican sponsor the bill gives it a little more validity and a better chance of probably passing in the Alabama legislature over the next couple of months.
And Paul used to live in the wine country in California, so maybe he got an appreciation.
Well, maybe that's it. But, it's interesting, and we love to see people push the boundaries and see where the people's temperature is. I mean, Patricia getting married this year, I call her Patricia Todd because she told me to, getting married this year and trying to pass a bill for same-sex marriage, that ain't gonna fly. I mean, not gonna happen.
Not yet, but I think and this is one thing that I was talking to Representative Todd about during the break, the Washington Post and ABC News did a poll back this summer to test the change in thoughts on same-sex unions. And one of the things that they found is that when you look at the demographics of 18 to 29-year-olds, more than 70% support legalizing same-sex unions. If you look at 65 and older, then 56% of that demographic is opposed to same-sex union. And so one of the things I think that when you look at the analysis, when you look at what the Supreme Court did this summer with the Defense of Marriage Act and striking that down in California, you look at what the district court in Utah has done just this past week as well, striking down their prohibition against same-sex marriage, the word that comes to mind is inevitable. Alabama may be on the back end of it, but I think when you look at those, it's inevitable.
I think it's like many things in life that we have seen and witnessed over the last 4 or 5 years. My father would probably roll in his grave. I mean, times have changed, whether it's good or it's bad. You're right, if those statistics are accurate, then it may be inevitable, maybe even in Alabama, but I don't think that we'll see it in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, we tend to be the make-me state, and
except for things like immigration and some real radical things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting what's happening in the nation. I mean, we've certainly, just remember the civil rights movement was just 50 years ago. I mean, 50 years ago we had a segregated South, and now here we are today without a smirk on our face, talking about the fact that gays might be granted the right to marry.
But it's going to be a divisive issue, because I understand that Jerry Fielding is going to sponsor a resolution that would cast support behind one of the stars of a television show off of a cable network. So you have the group that would be in favor of opposing same-sex marriage, and you have the bill that is sponsored by Representative Todd in the same legislative session.
Well, it's going to be exciting. There'll be a lot of press written, a lot of people write about it. It'll be somewhat exciting, and it will probably make national news here in Alabama over this issue again.
Well, the Duck Dynasty thing was interesting. A lot of folks supported it. I think Fielding's just pandering. He's trying to get some votes. I mean, I don't think
he's in a tough spot in his district, and
right.
Having been a former Democrat, he's running against Jim McClendon, who's pretty popular, and the district was drawn pretty much, I think, for McClendon. So I think Fielding is trying to get some traction on some issues.
We got 1 minute left. What's some predictions on the legislative session? You think there's much going to happen?
Well, I mean, we've got the budgetary problems. You know, the general fund is in really, really bad shape. They say the ugly budget. You've got the education budget. I believe there is some growth in that budget, and there's teachers wanting pay raise. I think it is an election year, like when Santa Claus comes to town. I think he's already been, but you know, for the legislative season, that's coming up. So I think you'll see that. And then there's been some other kind of controversial things regarding RSA and some of these hot button issues. I think you're going to see some things that would maybe help people out during election cycle.
Yeah, a lot of what is going to happen this year is going to help people who are incumbents. You know, the redistricting process was an incumbency protection program. We all know that. So they probably won't take on too much controversial issues this session.
Right, and you know they did, and the last session with having the accountability bill, which is extremely controversial in the way that it went down, and that's kind of a noose around a lot of Republicans' necks right now. It's going to hurt them. So
and I think there's going to be some attempts to fix legislation that was passed in the last session. One of the things I heard Dick Brubaker talking about recently is a fix to to the gun bill. Some of the issues that have arisen with respect to that particular legislation. So Claire and I don't always agree on issues, but I think we agree it's going to be fairly non-controversial because it is an election year, and some legislative fixes.
And hopefully get out early.
We got to go. You've been watching The V. We are here for you every week, Sunday at 11:30. Thank you for watching.